Coming to you live from a weird gray donut in space, it's Feature Please, a hateful voyage through the Delta Quadrant. My name is Joseph.
I'm your co-host, Peter.
Peter, what episode of Voyager did we watch this week?
Season 6, Episode 12, Blink of an Eye. Speaking of Blink of an Eye, we've had some very short podcasts that we have released in conjunction with Season Sucks because they're hard to talk about. So I want you to take all the times that we have come up about 45 or so minutes of our normal hour-long podcast and give me those rollover minutes because this is a doozy and we might go a little over.
The overall quality level of this episode, I think, might be a bit in dispute, but I will say that it does not lack for interesting ideas and things to talk about and get into the deep nitty-gritty of the nerd. I mentioned when we had our Australian friends last week that this was a really cool sci-fi story. And I stand by that. I also stand by the assertion that I wasn't sure how good an episode of Trek it is.
I'm going to say there's a disproportionate amount of good in this episode for what Season Sucks should have. And
oh yeah, if we're grading on a curve, this is excellent.
Yeah,
granted.
I want to take everything away from Dragon's Teeth because fuck Voyager. Like,
you're so traumatized by that, and I'm here for it.
It's ridiculous. If you had said, "Hey, are you willing to bet an appendage that we're gonna see these guys again?" Like, yeah, the fucking Klingassians. I would be one-armed Peter moving forward. Anyways, it was a good episode, and I would say this is a good episode with just a lot of really cool stuff. And I was thinking back to like Next Gen. It was weird. It was rare for Next Gen to break out like the real fringe, cerebral sci-fi elements. It was a lot of morality, a lot of diplomacy, not a lot of weird science stuff. And I think Voyager rings that bell a lot more than Next Gen did. Usually it's a garbage attempt, but I think this checks most of the boxes to come off as a great episode for me.
To me, it falls short of being a great episode because the best and most interesting parts of the story they're telling get abandoned in the third act. I'm referencing here the adventure of the Doctor on the planet.
Yeah.
The unseen adventure of the Doctor, as well as the cutaway vignettes to life on the planet. They have this consistent thread that they're building that, and they have this cool idea with what they do with the Doctor, and then they just decide to stop developing that and stop exploring that in the last act, and that kind of sucks for me. I did not enjoy the last act and how they decided to wrap this up. Despite that, though, this is one of the more interesting 45-minute, here's a sci-fi story where Voyager and Trek is just kind of the vehicle of putting this idea out there that the show actually does. And I'm here for it. Like, I still enjoyed it, even if I felt like it came a little short at the end of being a great episode.
Well, for starters, when I say a great episode, I of course mean a great episode for Voyager. So disclaimer there. And that is a very low bar, especially in the middle of Season 6, aka Season Sucks. I want to have a sidebar conversation. The situation you're talking about where there is potentially, I'm doing air quotes right now, potentially cool stuff the Doctor got up to that piques your interest, that, man, I would like to know more. I want to see these kids stomp these bugs out. I would like to know more. Maybe they could do a great job. Maybe they give it the old Voyager try and it's a garbage story that they end up telling and it sucks. Not Occam's razor, Schrodinger cat, right? What's in the box? Is it good plot or is it bad plot? You don't know until you open it up. I don't disagree with the tactic here of just teasing you a little bit, and then rather than fuck it up and make it bad and something that's a drag to watch, like, okay, we don't really go deeper into it, and it's there, and you can draw your own conjecture, your opinions, but rather than put showtime into it, we're going to leave it alone. And I don't think that's the worst thing to do.
I see where you're going with that. better they let it all kind of exist in your imagination with some little pieces and hints rather than give you too much and it sucks. You know, the you don't want to spoil the meal if the appetizer is fantastic.
Yeah.
I get that, but I think that what they teased out there was such an interesting idea. I don't want to. We'll get there in the episode. We'll talk more about it. So let's start getting into this thing before we spend too much time discussing parts of it before we discuss the whole.
So this is a time displacement episode, and if you have seen Interstellar, or what's the last time we touched the time dilation on Voyager? It wasn't that long ago. Which one was it?
Time dilation on this scale, I don't
Not
recall.
on this scale, but there was something where they got too close and it threw their time off a little bit. I can't believe I'm drawing blanks.
They had the relativity episodes where they were dealing with the future time cops, but
no,
it's a little different.
It was a planet rotation and something else. Whatever. In the vein of that, we've got our own time dilation going on here. We were supposed to record this on Wednesday. It's now Sunday because life happens. So if I'm a little slow on the draw, pulling some facts out of my brain, it's because we're doing this abnormally. So season 6, episode 12, Blink of an Eye. We come up on a pretty cool looking planet. Normally planets are spheres. This thing's like a cylinder that's getting squished.
It's a great donut. It's got a hole in it and everything. It looks delicious. Got some frosting on it. It's the donut planet. It doesn't it's one of those circumstances where the planet, the race that inhabits it, don't actually get a name in this episode. The makeup that these guys have is basically Cardassian if human. You know, it's got the Cardassian spoon head, but that's it. And we start on Voyager because they're approaching this planet, and it is rotating 58 times a minute, so almost one rotation a second. And I'm like, this is weird. No one's ever seen this before, and this is Starship Voyager. We cannot help ourselves. We see weird shit on our way home. We gotta swing by and take a look-sees.
It's Janeway looking starstruck at this thing with Chakotay. And I'm going to give this the award for the most Janeway body contact of all time. She is like just completely flushed, boobs surgically attached to Chakotay's arm. Like just they're glued together on the bridge, standing there looking at this thing. And all I could think was like, God, what if Picard ever went up and just got on Riker like this, looking at this thing? Inappropriate.
This is the privilege of being Janeway close talker. You've managed to break those personal space barriers down day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year with these people. Mm-hmm. Now you can just go boobs to arms, be like, this is normal now. This is how you live your life.
We're running lean here on Voyager. We had to turn down life support, so it gets a little chilly, and we just go for that body to body contact. It's just getting more energy or more mileage out of the energy.
We promise it's not a sex thing. The captain saves that only for Irish bartenders. Anyway, so a bunch of technobabble happens, and Voyager gets sucked into an orbit around the donut planet, and it's all a bunch of gobbledygook of gravimetric this, tachyon that, space-time differential, your standard issue technobabble. It's fine. We're here for it, right? We get explanations, even if I have no idea if they're supposed to make any sense whatsoever. And Taryn's not here to give us a 15-minute monologue about if it should or not. Love you, dude. I'm buying on its face value, but that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is that we begin a series of cutaways to the surface of this planet where they are experiencing the effects of Voyager entering orbit, because it's fucking with their poles and their gravimetric, vibe. Yeah. Down there, and it starts this chain reaction of impacts on how their entire society develops as a consequence that we see play out through the episode. And it is definitely the coolest thing that they do. It literally starts with caveman people all the way to super future tech.
So these cavemen people are, if you can think to Willow the movie, the brownies, right? The little
Yeah, I buy that.
that's
That's the
that's what
that's the
these guys
vibe.
look like. Um, so there's a lot of cool questions you can ask in this episode. If the planet is developing and spinning as fast as it is, like how many civilizations have came and fallen, or species or whatever? Like the
Yeah,
odds.
that's the big question at the end is, is this species actually able to break through this barrier, or is this planet like doomed to this cycle of intelligent civilizations rising and falling, and then some new species, because of the speed at which it rotates, coming and evolving and replacing it?
Like, how fortuitous of Voyager to show up exactly as the species is getting up off of its feet. Because, as you alluded to earlier, Voyager gets stuck in a goofy orbit around this place, and they effectively become the third pole for the planet. And the result of that is they start getting really bad earthquakes that uh, haunt the species through its evolution.
And we're
Uh,
talking like 4 times a day, 4 to 5 pointers at a minimum. Pretty consistent shaking is happening on this planet.
Yeah, and it's pretty consistent interference from the Death Ship Voyager. This is a real black mark on that Delta Quadrant next door score. Like, Janeway's done some dirty things to some individual planets in the past, but this is one for the books. You instantly know what's going to happen in this episode, and we talk frequently. Like, did Voyager do this first? Were there other properties or um, stories that were told using this formula before, and we're just seeing it now in Voyager, or did they really carve something new into sci-fi? There's two stories that I can think of that have to be based heavily. Well, one I know for sure is the second. Did you get through Love, Death, and Robots?
I did.
So there was that deep freezer episode, right, where there was the lost civilization
Right.
in that couple's freezer, and like every time they'd open the door, you'd see like a new stage of evolution in this little miniature world living in there. And the other big one is the season one series or season finale for Orville, which was Mad Idol Tree. Do you remember that episode?
No, I don't.
That's the one where Kelly screws up and ends up being classed as a god, and it's one of these planets that's like
Oh yeah,
phasing.
yeah. It's like the religion. Yeah, it's their big religion episode.
And Isaac stays behind, and he gets to watch this, decades and decades of civilization maturity until they come out of the phase and they're able to interact again, and now they're like super enlightened spacefaring. So a lot of stuff seemed really familiar, and it all comes back to this Voyager episode, and it was cool to finally see that. So Voyager's there, they're causing problems, and Prime Directive is in some deep trouble.
Yeah, I guess like this is technically a break of the Prime Directive, obviously, but it's one of those, we broke it without even knowing it was a thing that could be broken in this circumstance. We broke it on accident, so it doesn't matter. Which is the next line in the Prime Directive. If you break it on accident, it's totally cool. Don't worry about it, because there's no mention of like what like there's one. I take that back. There is one mention. There's a briefing scene where it's like, we're breaking the Prime Directive. It's like, we broke it the moment we showed up. Their entire civilization is based around us. We're their god. Like, we already fucked it up. We might as well try and fix it. The episode does a decent job the first few acts of cutting up to Voyager as they're trying to figure things out, and not a lot of time has passed, and then cutting back down to the surface so you can kind of see where like their new level of development is. Because you get the caveman people, and they're like, "Oh, a new god has appeared. It wants the fire fruit. It will be only be sacrificed for it." They just interpret that the arrival of Voyager is that it is an angry god in the sky, and then
I really like
after.
that fire fruit part too, because they literally believe it is a god, that only this god is allowed to eat the fire fruit, and that the whatever their version of human, the people are now not allowed to. And when they jump ahead a few 100 years, and they're in like what their Bronze Age or something at that point, I'd say.
More like medieval. They've got like hot air balloon, technology kind of going.
So the Maester, I don't know how else.
Yeah. So they have the caveman people, and then they have they cut back to Voyager, and they're starting to figure out what's going on, and they like send a probe, and they're like, oh shit, there's people down there. this we might be really fucking with some shit. Oh no.
Everybody's like,
ooh. Yeah, like guys, Pottery Barn rules. We broke it. We have to buy it.
mm-hmm.
And they cut back, and now it's, as you said, it's Game of Thrones level of technology. You see like castles being built. There's a little village. Oh, another cool kind of framing device for the episode. All of the scenes on the surface take place in the same geographic spot, which of course is just them saving on money, but only having the one set, but provides an anchor for your understanding of when they cut back down there. I'm like, oh, that's the spot. We've seen this spot. And like now there's changes in the background. We're like, oh, interesting,
So the Maester shows up, and the local king, and he's called a protector, I want to say.
Correct.
And he's like, I'm going to send a message up in the hot air balloon to the thing up in the sky. Maybe there's people there when they have a leader. Maybe there's a protector up there. And I'm going to ask him politely to stop shaking the shit out of everything down here, because it's a real drag. And the Maester seems like a little enlightened. He's like, oh, come on, you're thinking of fairy tales and you're being silly and superstition and this and that. And then the protector's like, well, if you don't believe in superstition, go ahead and eat one of the fire fruit. And the Maester's kind of like, ooh, you called my bluff. You called my... He's not willing to go in the bathroom with the lights off and look in the mirror and say Bloody Mary 5 times,
Beetlejuice. He won't do it. The next cutaway up to Voyager is them like actually doing the probe and then seeing like at the industrial buildup of the planet. And that's when we get some background of like, oh, well, there starts to be buildings and roads and internal combustion engines, but like all of their buildings are very fortified with a ton of iron because they have to build around the fact that their planet shakes all the time. So it's like all of their buildings are earthquake proof.
That's really cool. Like,
yes.
That
really
was
neat. Yeah.
And when they show, interior shots as they move through the years, you see these big ass like steel girders all over the place. Like that's who wrote this thing? Let me see what's going on here. We got a story by Michael Taylor, teleplay by Scott Miller and Joe Manowski, and then directed by Gabriel Beaumont. Good job, Mike Taylor and Scott Miller and Joe Manowski. I mean, that's just fucking great details. That's stuff that a lot of times would just go left off the table by Voyager, and it's fun and it feels good to see.
Oh, this is Gabrielle Beaumont's only Voyager episode. I didn't know that. She is the same director as did Lower Decks. I think is probably the best one she ever did. And if it's just like the art direction, like whoever gave the notes to the matte painters or the CG artists of like, this is what the stuff in the background is supposed to look like, that added so much to what was going on.
Yeah.
Is the when they cut back to the planet after that revelation is when you see the skyscrapers, everything's got steel girders, and there's an observatory that's also like stone with steel girders on it. And when you go inside, there's literally handles everywhere for people to grab when the earthquakes happen. So you're just like going around your day and the earthquakes happen, you grab a handle and wait for it to end.
Yeah.
Like, what a neat. Good job, guys. Like, this feels lived in instantly.
If only the Starfleet engineers who designed the Galaxy class could have had such foresight, how many broken backs and shattered hips they could have prevented on the bridge of people just being flung around and thrown had there been a couple handlebars to grab onto.
This is the most OSHA compliant planet we have seen.
It's serious. Planet OSHA.
There it is.
The oceans. I like this snippet they work in. There's this real Rocketeer vibe aesthetically. I'd say it's like the equivalent of like the 30s in this observatory, and they're sending radio signals up into orbit trying to make contact with prime numbers and stuff like that. And you've got this interesting interplay between the lead researcher and a new guy on the team. And the new guy on the team is a real doubting Thomas about everything. But there's this mutual hope that, you know, the people on Voyager, who this culture has called the Sky Friends,
the Sky Ship,
yeah, but the Sky Friends inside of it, complete with its own toy line and everything else. And it's kind of like this wink, wink, nudge, nudge, talking about action figures and ships and all this other stuff, which of course there is for Star Trek already. So these guys being racked by earthquakes and a third magnetic pole can share in the same pastime of collecting Star Trek junk that I have.
I liked the quick progression we see of the cave people think that Voyager is a baleful god. The Game of Thrones level of technology people are like, it's probably not that, but maybe it's like another place, who knows, starts to speculate. And then by the time we get to the 1930s, they're like, yeah, we can actually see it. We know it's a ship now, right? Like, we look at our telescope, we look up there, we see the fucking thing. Like, there it is. When
they show the telescope shot of Voyager and you can see the nacelles in the saucer section, I was like, oh damn.
Yeah, like they know it's a ship, and you know they've come to the conclusion that there must be some way to communicate with whoever the fuck is in that goddamn thing, and that's why this effort is ongoing. Like they've dialed in very quickly to it's a god to no, those are people in space, and we need to get up there and talk to them about what the fuck they're doing.
So Chakotay and Seven are chilling out in astrometrics, and they actually pick up the radio transmissions. And like, I think a lot of times the proportion of the stakes in Voyager are way off. It's either super low risk stuff that I could give two shits about, or it's silliness like, hey, we just took down the entire Borg collective. Like it falls out of scope. This, I feel like there's real consequences. And like in video games, I hate any video game where there is some sort of a clock hanging over my head. You know, Majora's Mask, the fucking Ninja Turtles NES game, the underwater level. Right? So
okay, I just want to point out, I got really good at that when I was a kid. I was actually able, I never beat the first Ninja Turtles game, but I actually did get into the Technodrome on multiple occasions, and then got killed and eventually like gave up because after playing the game for hours to get there only to die hideously on the last stage, it was disheartening to my 8-year-old self. But
yeah, that's why you're a mean person, Joe. Ninja Turtles did that to you. Most people would have just said, this is going to poison me as a person, I need to stop, and they walked away from it. But you let that game break you and turn you into a mean person. I don't know anybody in my entire life that's ever beat that fucking thing. Ninja Turtles was a terrible, infamously terrible, bad game. And yeah, again, to this day, I feel traumatized anything that has a timer. So my heart really goes out to everybody involved in this, because like for a ship of goody two-shoes Helpy McHelpersons, watching in real time as you just fuck an entire species into the dirt.
There's nothing you can do to stop it.
Yeah.
And by the way, that NES Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game is actually good. And perhaps that could be our special episode where I explain to you why that game is actually good.
You're mean and you're crazy. Your sanity is shattered. You're a broken person. You're a broken person.
Up is down, left is right. Cats and dogs living together. Mass hysteria.
What were you talking about? Star Trek Voyager.
Oh, yeah. So after they receive the transmissions from the planet, they're like, oh, they're sending numbers. Oh, they're like talking to us. That's when, like you're saying, the realization of, oh no, we've really done it this time, guys. Like they are really into us, and like centuries have passed from their perspective. Like, there's no coming back from what we've done. What do we do? And that's when they have that meeting.
And they're getting begged, like, please stop it. You're really, really hurting us.
And of course, Voyager is dutifully attempting to try and find ways to escape. But while they work on that, they come to the conclusion like, we need to send someone down there to gather information, but we can't send like a person down there because we don't know what these people look like. So, we can't like change our appearance once we're down there easily. And there's also we'll probably give them a time stroke if we did that.
Yeah.
So that leaves exactly one crew member with the capability of being able to go down there and immediately make themselves look like whatever this species is supposed to look like, and B, not die of a time stroke, and that's the Doctor.
Fucking love it. Like, how exciting. What a great use for your holographic character with his 29th century hypertech to send this guy. I mean, he's immune to everything, and the Doctor, something's going to get fucked up, and the Doctor's going to get stuck down there and have like a whole quantum leap crazy life experience, right? Which is, of course, what's going to happen. I love for the initial test of, hey, can we even like safely transport something down to the surface without it like blowing up? They don't transport an apple. It's just like right into like, hey, what's the one Doctor we have on the ship and this crazy 29th century hypertech? Like, let's use that as our first transport.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and just beep boop this a couple times here, and you should be able to make yourself look correct, and you're going to be in phase with their time frame or whatever. And okay, good luck, buddy. Hopefully we didn't just fuck this up. B'Elanna's super casual about it as always when it comes to the Doctor. It's just this consistent thread through the series. And
other than Vulcans, are there any other like super long lifey aliens you could have on the ship? God, what if they put Vorik down there? Ugh. Fuck it up and go to free pond fars, and like they find a radically different like murder rapist society has a
Vorik has turned them into an entire planet of rapists. They're very impressionable people.
Ugh. Yeah, so good call using the Doctor. And I got like so happy when they actually did it.
So as we've already discussed in part, one of the more interesting threads that they build into this episode is that the standard oops, the transporter doesn't work moment happens, and instead of pulling him out after 3 seconds, which would be 3 days, he's down there for many minutes, which by the time they beam him back out is equivalent to 3 years worth of time.
Quick shout out to Chakotay for figuring out where the Doctor would be based on where the opera houses were. Like, that's a solid Chakotay emotional intelligence moment.
It is, yes. Like, he's the first person to think, oh, we should just look for places the Doctor would go because he likes it. Like, I Chakotay, who is, as you said, the most emotionally intelligent person on this ship, evidently, comes to that conclusion immediately.
So 3 years down there, and they were a productive 3 years in many ways.
I love the way Picardo, like when they get him back up, he's just like immediately filled with relief of like, Captain, he just gives her a hug. Just like, boom, bear hug. Like, I haven't seen you in years. I am so relieved. Like, all of this emotion all of a sudden that makes complete sense within context of the experience that he has evidently had.
Yes, and who would have ever thought that you delete one line of ethics code and he would be torture porning people?
God, just fucking, I hate that so much even more. Every time they build more and more complexity into the Doctor's character with stuff like this, I hate that moment even more.
So resentful. Like, it just poisons the entire experience. That moment in Equinox was the Picard, the series moment of Star Trek Voyager. It's ruined forever.
It's easier to let go because I'm so used to Voyager's writing being so bad and inconsistent that a bad moment like that I could just kind of put out of my head and not think about it. And then you're here to remind me. In the same way that I tortured you over Dragon's Teeth, you're here to remind me of Equinox Part 2.
I had to get a crown. Have you ever had a crown put in your mouth before?
Yes, I have.
So they first take the tooth that's getting the crown and they like shave it down to a little mutant nublet of a tooth, which just grosses me out and I'm horrified to even think about. And they put this temporary crown on top of it. And the doctor's like, hey, don't eat anything like no weird meat and do not floss your teeth under any circumstances. So I'm like, okay. So of course I go out that night and I eat a fucking Reuben and I have all this corned beef stuck in my teeth. And I'm like, gosh, I could just pop in and out of there like once. Like, what's the worst that would happen, right? So I pop this goddamn crown temp out and I've got this mutant nubby tooth exposed and it just I'm shrieking like in horror. It's so fucking terrible. And it's just scarred me forever. And that's what that moment in Equinox is for the Doctor. It's like a raw nerve ending. My worst visions come true. But he's super happy to hug the human and even B'Elanna, who he has often tortured and been tortured by.
Absence makes the heart grow fonder. And we also see kind of an improved emotional intelligence on the part of the Doctor for the rest of the episode. I don't know if you picked up on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there's this whole, he's just more like better. He's just more natural around everybody, just like he's more of a person after 3 years of having to live among people kind of covertly. He just got more in kind of sync with emotions.
I hate to do it, but just for the sake of continuity, again, surprisingly, Memory Alpha super thin on info here. It's sad because I really did enjoy this episode. I would like to see more background. Was the Dumb Tank Girl episode?
Oh yeah, well I only remember
that was the one where there was a goofy time dilation thing going on. It was that was exactly fucking Tank Girl, same interstellar type deal. Yeah, okay, good. Pat on my own back. In that episode, was his transmitter damaged? Is that why he couldn't be on all the time and they had to start like rationing him?
I think there was an issue with like how much power was necessary to run the emitter or something. They had a limitation on that, which good point. Like there isn't really an explanation of how or why he was able to run without, I would presume, an exterior power source for 3 years.
I don't know. Maybe their holodecks, their toasters run on emitter compatible energy. Again, minor gripe. I'm just, for continuity. And again, I'm glad I did bring it up because that Tank Girl episode was the same type deal, which they don't ever shout it out in this, but why would you? That was a terrible episode. So he's got a lot of information that he was able to bring back instead of having the 3 days. Would you say it was like 6 years down there or 3 years?
3 years. 3 years.
Yeah. So he's like, listen, I got some good stuff here. Let's get to work on figuring out how we're going to break out of this gravitational headlock we're stuck in.
He also reveals a lot of like societal information that Voyager's existence and that it is clearly a ship, as they've been able to determine by observation, has really like forced the entire society to technologically evolve to reach Voyager as a goal for everyone on the planet, because obviously like, oh, we're not alone in the universe. We've all known this for centuries, right? So if we know that is true because we can observe it, then we are all driven to like get up there, right? And see what the fuck is going on. And this is also when he conveys that he says he had a roommate. He had a wife is what he had down there.
My notes say the Doctor got wet.
The Doctor had a special friend, for sure. We'll find out later he had a son, not, I would assume, a biological one, but the pieces are there of that he probably got close with some kind of single parent widower type of situation, had a stepchild, that sort of thing. Gave him a weird Earth name.
Jason, right?
Yes. I presume the Doctor probably created a name for himself while he was down there, but we don't ever hear what that might have been. Yeah. Like I said, there was so much more that they could have done with this that they just they tease you with these little bits of like, oh, this seems so cool, and then they don't pay it off.
Here's where the payoff needed to be. Like I like the idea of laying the breadcrumbs out, like, man, there's some juicy stuff going on here, but not giving you the details on what it was exactly and letting us sit here and play what if. The story that needed to come up, not how he went on these adventures in the past, but now suddenly he's been ripped out of this life he has carved out for himself for 3 years. He has a very clear, strong emotional attachment to these natives down on the surface, and he is never going to see them again. And for all intents and purposes, these people, he just walked out and abandoned all of them. I want to see the emotional impact on the Doctor having to live with that as he is pulled back into his original life seconds after he left, but carrying all of this baggage.
They touch on a little bit of that by him talking about, whenever he doubted, or despaired, he just could just look up and there's Voyager, right? Like, he knows they're going to eventually get him. He can still see them, right? And so it may not be as damaging to him because he's always lived his life with the assumption of, like, I could literally be just beamed out of here anytime, by them scrambling to find a way to get me out of here. So maybe that blunts that impact a little bit when you're not like abandoning hope and then all of a sudden are pulled out of this new life you've built for yourself. It's, no, I know I'm going to get pulled out eventually. Like, it will happen.
What if the Doctor didn't stay down in the area where he was originally transported from because he made a conscious decision that he wanted to leave that life behind and go live out his life on the planet as a real person instead of a fucking appliance that lives in a closet? And like, when he gets beamed up, he has to like suddenly reprogram himself and be like, oh no, I wasn't doing that at all. Yeah, I'm happy to be back here. I totally wasn't trying to go AWOL. See, it's so much fun. It could be anything, it could be everything, like Schrodinger's cat, right? And I think, to my other point,
how many times do you think the Doctor had some kind of murder programming issue while he was down there over the 3 years?
Oh my god, those poor people.
Yeah, like, how many times did he turn into Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde type of situation?
What do we? The name you're looking for is Dr. Evil.
Yeah, how many Dr. Evils happened? Like, how many times did his inner Colonel Campbell come out? Because they're not free of conflict. There was a war, right? His apartment got shelled at one point. Ooh. Like, did he join the military and advise them on counterterrorism? Did he break the Prime Directive even further by unlocking for them the technology of the space pipe?
Ooh.
Like, what horrors have been unleashed?
Or one of his Dr. Evil stints to make himself into the Jack the Ripper of there. Listen, we need to get Robert Picardo back on the Cameo phone, right?
we need answers.
We need to pitch him on a Patreon funded mini series detailing the Doctor's adventures on the planet Donut and all the crazy rogue AI moments he had. Like, fuck this Captain Proton miniseries. This is what we need. But anyways, they do kind of touch on his emotional attachment there later on when the astronauts end up on the ship. He says, hey, listen, when you get back down on the planet, check for whatever, Times Square and a guy named Jason. He's probably dead by now, but just find out what happened and tell whatever family he's got that, I'm sorry, or whatever the message was.
He kind of leaves it open. Well, let's get to that. So the Doctor starts to give him all this information. Voyager is the singular focus of the entire civilization. There's toys, there's constant speculation, there's a space race. And then we see the Voyager try to escape, right? Like, they try to actually pull out, and it actually starts to shake the planet even more, so they have to stop. So Voyager has exhausted all of their ideas about how to get away, which is important for later.
There's one other part that the Doctor relays, and it's that not everybody is super space racy to get up there. Some people, and it's a minority at that point, are just like, let's blow this fucking thing out of the sky.
However, because time has continued to pass, eventually they develop the, I guess you would call it, like, 70s era spacefaring technology. Mm-hmm. And they Apollo mission their way up to Voyager. And The lead astronaut of this mission is played by Daniel Day Kim, who later became much more famous for being on Lost, and then much more famous even further for people who are 20 years older than us for being in the remake of Hawaii Five-O.
Those are both outside my wheelhouse. So
I definitely remember him from Lost. Like he was a key character on Lost from the very beginning, and I watched that show for the first few seasons as a lot of people did, and then stopped as a lot of people also did. But perhaps even more surprising to folks who are below the age of 50, the Hawaii Five-O TV remake. This was out, by the way. This is why Alex Kurtzman still has a job as shit like this, right? This is a show Alex Kurtzman created, okay, for CBS, and it ran for 10 seasons.
What?
It just ended. Yes, it started
What?
in 2010. It started in 2010, ended in 2020, and Daniel Day Kim was like third lead on that for the first 7 seasons. There was the only reason I knew the show was still going was a few years ago. There was this big blow up because essentially every Asian actor on the show quit after the 7th season because they wouldn't pay him as much as the white actors. This was the whole thing, right? And my first thing was, wow, that's quite a scandal. My other thing was, wow, that show is still on? Like, who's watching it? Like, who are these people? And then I looked it up, and it's like one of the top 5 shows, and it's on Friday nights on CBS. I'm like, wow, what is this world where people are watching network television on Friday? Man. Jesus.
Not my world. The astronaut stuff is cool, and it's a great fake out. They get up there, they observe Voyager, they try to communicate back with Dallas. They get a bunch of like high-speed scribble because they don't know the time dilation exists and that they've crossed the event horizon and are now outside of the world's time. And then the commander's just like, all right, well, we can't communicate. We don't know what our orders are. Let's dock. I think I saw a docking port. Let's get in there and make first contact. And it's such a great fake out because like I instantly get pissed because the next scene are these 2 astronauts just forcing a door in a Jeffries tube open. Their helmets are off, right? These guys come from the same school as Prometheus, where you just take your fucking helmet off in an alien environment because, hey, what's the worst that could happen?
Hey, in Prometheus, they didn't even go out with them, did they? No. I'm sorry. That was the Alien movie that came after. Prometheus, they had helmets on and then took them off, didn't they?
Foolishly, yes. Again, real strong entry into Tuvok is the fucking worst, where the external doors to the ship are not locked, and dudes in Apollo spacecraft are able to just jimmy the door open and get in. And they're walking through, and I'm just kind of like, how is Voyager not going ape shit right now? Because I forgot about the time dilation myself. And then they finally get out in the hallway, and you just see everybody frozen in time. And I'm like, oh, right.
That's right. Oh, yeah, the plot of the episode. Silly me.
So good. I was so wrapped up in my favorite pastime of hating Tuvok. Of condemning Tuvok's security, which I'm still not letting him off the hook. Like, yeah, why are dudes in a capsule forcing open deuterium doors or whatever?
Let me be clear, though. The idea of instead of doing an actual freeze frame effect and instead having all of your actors do your best time in from fucking Saved by the Bell was super lame, because you could see everybody like kind of like doing that thing where you're trying to be rigid but you can't stay rigid, so you start to shake, right? It was just obvious on everybody.
It's like, so Star Trek. I love it though.
They could have just done a freeze frame shot and then had the other 2 actors like come in after and just
freeze
overlaid
frame
it.
Looks bad, and eventually they're like, are they in suspended animation? What's going on? Why are they like this? And it's not until they get up on the bridge where you see Neelix pouring coffee for Janeway, and like the coffee is suspended in midair, that they're like, oh shit. And that actually is freeze framed, and that looks like crap. So I think having people red light looks better, and I like it more.
Eventually, Daniel Day Kim and actress who is soon to be killed have to go through their time strokes, and they do. An actress who is soon to be killed is killed off screen.
Commander, not gonna matter anymore.
Yeah, Commander not going to be part of this episode. And but thankfully Daniel Day Kim survives and is woken up in sick bay by the doctor, who's like, I'm really good with understanding their physiology because I was down there for 3 years, and wakes him up and says, hey, this is the story, this is what's going on. And of course, because Daniel Day Kim is essentially their version of an enlightened space scientist, is like, oh, well, that all makes sense. That's kind of crazy, but it all makes sense. How do we get you out of here? Like, obviously you need to go. Right? Like, it isn't really any drama whatsoever with him accepting exactly what's happening.
What a trooper, too, because exactly what's happening, like, talk about, and, again, right back into Interstellar, like, hey, your whole life is gone. Everybody you knew is dead because in the, 10 minutes it took for me to res you out of your time strokes. Like, it's a whole new world down there, buddy, and I hope you told your mom and dad and children and grandchildren or whatever else goodbye, because they are gone.
I'm trying to see. I don't think there's a lot that happens in between him waking him up from his time stroke, him getting kind of the download on what's going on, uh, his immediate acceptance and understanding, and then the bombardment. So potentially because Voyager attempted to break away earlier in the episode and nearly like shook off a whole part of like a whole city, the fuck those guys, coalition on the planet has prevailed, and they start just shooting torpedoes at Voyager. And at first they're like not very good torpedoes, but they get better over time, and since time for them is passing very quickly, they are developing more and more effective torpedoes so fast that it looks like it's like a rapid fire assault cannon of torpedoes starts hitting their shields before too long.
Well, Joe, fuck you is a two-way street. And whereas Planet Donut has decided fuck you Voyager, Voyager itself has a little fuck you coalition in the form of Tom Paris, and perhaps the most insensitive shit I've ever seen out of Starfleet. And I've seen a lot of crazy Admiral schemes before. Tom's like, shouldn't we return fire? And it's like, dude, what? What? You have ruined an entire goddamn planet. Like, you already fucked the entire Delta Quadrant and the other quadrants too by, letting the Borg live and encouraging their death march. But like, you guys have ruined this planet over its entire lifespan of a civilization. You're talking about shooting guns back down, trying to nuke it from orbit. Get the fuck out of here, Tom.
I know you're a convict, Tom, but Jesus Christ. Have some dignity here. We have fucked with these people for literally, from their perspective, millennia at this stage. Like, they're okay to be angry at us. That's not their fault.
You think you're prison space Jesus in the chute and you can just go knife someone in the neck for space candy bars? Like, come on, man.
Hey, you want a real jail sentence? How about I stick you down on that planet for 5 minutes? Like, fucking deal with that.
You guys like going down to the surface and fist fighting people. You and Harry can both go. Did they send Daniel Day Kim back down at this point, or is he on the bridge when they start getting rocked?
They start getting rocked when he's in astrometrics with 7 of 9. And then he comes to the bridge and is like, yeah, I need to go back them over there and tell them to stop shooting you.
I really would have thought that at this point, given the caliber of acting this guy's putting forward, the hero story that they're giving him, and the fact that his entire life just got erased, I would have, had I been watching this for the first time when it aired originally, January 9th. Ooh, look at that. We're almost on a 21-year anniversary, because this originally aired January 19th, 2000.
Oh, wow.
Episode's old enough to drink, Joe.
Good God. Don't tell me shit like that. I can't handle that.
It's timey-wimey bullshit. I would have thought that this guy was a strong candidate for Voyager to bring him onto the crew. He's a person who exists now outside of the scope of his own society. It's a star power material actor. Interesting backstory, but We know that Voyager doesn't bring interesting people into the crew. We just squander them. Shout out Dr. Pell.
Rest in peace, Dr. Pell, who clearly did not survive her bullshit like group of murder organ harvesting compatriots for much longer after betraying them.
Yeah. Shout out Kazon Nog. But yeah, I would have thought that this guy would have been someone primed to crew him up. But he knows what he has to do, and he flies back down to the surface. In the time he's been away, the space program has been scrapped, and mission control is now like the war center or whatever. So when he's flying in, he gets some weather person on the horn, and he's like, listen, I need to get a landing permit. And they're like, oh, it couldn't be you. You're just a practical joker. Get off this line. And he's like, hey, I got the details about the Sky Friends. Like, we need to stop.
And he's like, "Hey, you wanna be famous? I'm about to land this shit on Times Square. Here we go." So
Cool
like,
stuff.
I can't get through to you, so I'm just gonna land this shit in the most public place possible, so you can't possibly say it's not me.
Yeah.
Which, granted, that's an effective strategy. I like it.
Yeah. So before he goes back down to the surface, though, the EMH hits him up and says, hey, listen, when you get down there, look for this guy named Jason. He's my son, and try and find his family and give him a message. And it's like, what's this message going to be like? Hey, Jason's son, I just wanted to let you know that your grandpa was a holographic alien.
It was a skyship friend. I don't know what you want to do with that information, but there it is.
Yeah, in case you were wondering why sometimes your appendages disappear when you walk out of your house, and also about once every 3 months you become evil and try to kill and torture people inexplicably. Yeah, it's because your grandpa was a holographic alien.
Speaking of inexplicably, why does Daniel Day Kim's character understand what a hologram is? Like, intrinsically?
I mean, we know what holograms are, right?
Yeah, but like, from his technological perspective, would someone in the 1970s know what a fucking hologram is?
Would they? Let's see. What kind of sci-fi do we have to rely on? 70s, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
There was an Emperor projection in Star Wars that was a hologram, so holograms had to be a thing, right?
I guess, yeah, that's close enough. That sort of thing, like Wizard of Oz, right? Like projection,
Sure.
even in the 30s. Okay, fair.
Let's talk about the bigger question here, Joe. Hot on the heels of the Voyager conspiracy, why does Planet Donut have tri-cobalt devices, Joe?
Well, they develop them, they create them, and they shoot one. They shoot only one.
Where
Like,
could Planet Donut have gotten operational knowledge and blueprints of tri-cobalt devices? The Doctor, Joe, here's the Voyager conspiracy.
oh, I'm here for this. Go ahead.
Okay, the Doctor did not want to return to Voyager. The Doctor wanted to be a free hologram, a free man living his own life as a flesh and blood person. He fled the initial transporter down area. He hid along the coastline. He tried to carve a life out for himself by trading Federation secrets and empowering Planet Donut with the technology to destroy Voyager, getting the death ship out of his life forever. And had it not been for that meddling pacifist, emotionally intelligent Chakotay beaming him back up, his plan would have worked. There is no fucking you're talking about how does this guy know about holograms? How does Planet Donut know about the tri-cobalt device, which has only existed, to my knowledge, in 3 episodes of Star Trek? Caretaker, Voyager Conspiracy, and now Blink of an Eye.
I just love the idea that, like, when the astronaut came aboard, they were all like the Doctor's stormtroopers. You know, they're like on his, they worship him as some kind of god. That sort of thing. Like, it's all this like conspiracy. Like, they communicate with him once they get up there. It's all part of the plan to finally get him back down there, put it into the skyship once and for all. It's part of his Colonel Campbell, a deep cover assassination.
Who knows? Listen, I'm telling you, we need to get Robert Picardo for this collaboration. A lot of meat on this bone. We could do great things.
There's a pause after Daniel Day Kim gets back to the planet. They stop shooting, and not too long after that, two much larger, more technologically advanced looking pod ships roll up and throw tractor beams on Voyager and tow its jabroni ass out of orbit. Like, that is how the space conundrum in this episode is solved. They get pushed. That's it.
They send up
That's
space
the end.
bouncers, and the bouncers say, "All right, you've had too much to drink. You're out."
Yeah,
And
get the fuck out of our club, yo. Like, we've had enough of you.
they Uncle Phil yeet him out the door like DJ Jazzy Jeff.
And we get a slightly older Daniel Day Kim who beams over with like a temporary time stroke prevention device to say, "Hey, obviously I talked to everybody, and they, came up here to get you out of here. But we're still trying to figure out how we exist in normal time with the universe stuff yet. So, good luck, Godspeed. But we've got our own shit we got to deal with what the fuck is up with this weird planet we're on." And so there isn't much left of the episode except the final shot, which is again on, the sacrifice rock. It's a very technologically advanced city that you see now. And it's a very, very old looking Daniel Day Kim who finally sees Voyager warp away, and the star that it represented is finally gone.
Love it.
And great final shot, great final moment, especially like seeing that character aged after just a few, seconds, as far as we can tell. And it leaves that question that Taryn asked, which is, what is this planet? Like, I think that it's quite possible that it's seen constant, like, rises and falls of civilizations or rises and falls of whole species over time, and that this is just one in a series of different intelligent species that might have come to pass on this planet. But Voyager's interference may have made it the first one with technological curiosity
to break the loop.
It doesn't answer that question of like, what happens to these people? Do they actually eventually break out of this? Do they do something? Right? Like, we don't know. But my interpretation of it is this is a cycle that's gone on over and over and over again. But this time, because of Voyager, suddenly everyone was looking outward for the entire cycle. And so now there's this opportunity for them to finally break out and not suffer the same fate, which is just entirely speculative on my part. But that's kind of what I think their fate ends up being.
That's the theme of Star Trek, right? Is that things get better and things, advance, and it's a bright, exciting future ahead of us and these guys. So I would say, yeah, that optimistic viewpoint is right on brand for Star Trek, and I can feel good about endorsing it as well. I don't really know what bad to say about this episode. There's like some little nitpicky details out there. Certainly, I'm sympathetic to your comments about kind of cheating, and I can't even say they're cheating the doctor. I mean, the doctor got something. You get the impression of it. I don't need you to connect the dots. There's enough there that I can accept the fact that he had a family and he grew. I'd say this is what, top 5, top 10 for sure.
Really? You put it that high?
I'm
a little surprised.
It's a great story, man. It's great fringe sci-fi. I think everybody's acting right on their marks, minus fucking Tom and his murder, his genocide impulse out there. Like, no one seems to really be acting off the rails or crazy. The crew, for the most part, everybody's on solid footing. Janeway's not fucking cuckoo this time around. Where's it coming up short for you?
It's not that it's coming up short. Like I said, it's a pretty good episode of Star Trek that is elevated by the neat sci-fi premise of the framing device of the planet, unstuck in time, kind of, moving at a completely different pace than its surroundings, and how they work that in. That's really neat. I just would not make it anywhere close to something that's in the top 10, though, just because the most interesting parts of the episode feel kind of incomplete, you know? I would absolutely put, let me run through every episode that I think I would put above this, going all the way back to season 1. I would put Eye of the Needle above this. I would put Persistence of Vision above this. I would put Cold Fire above this. I would put Meld above this. I would put Year of Hell. I would put Timeless, obviously. Worst Case Scenario, I would put above this.
Oh, so let me pose this to you: is this a time travel episode?
Yes. Yes, it is. I think I would call this a time travel episode.
One of the best time travel episodes, then.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's definitely a king of a small mountain. You climb that one in one step. Like what's the real competition? Future's End? Like, yes, clearly better than dealing with Sarah Silverman. There's Timeless. That's a time travel episode. It is not the best time travel episode.
It's not the best, but it's a good one.
It's time travel done in a unique way that is interesting for storytelling.
Voyager's had a couple of those, and I enjoy them. I really like creative, fresh ways to do the time travel episode. A lot of the stuff you're saying that they could have fleshed out a little bit better. The sad reality of this episode is those developmental scenes were ditched at the cost of having to facilitate the fucking I don't know if it's like mandated or contractually obligated 7 of 9 and Naomi Wildman bullshit around astrometrics. Like, why did that scene need to be in there? Oh, 7, I'm having a hard time. I'm writing a report about this planet, and I don't know what to name my report. I want to name it something stupid. And then 7's like, well, why don't we name it the Weird Planet Displaced in Time? Oh my gosh, 7, that's such a great episode. And maybe Star Trek V'ger Please will steal that for the episode title of this. Thanks for hanging out with me for 5 minutes while we don't touch on any of these other important things. Like, who asked for that scene? What is this adding? Get Naomi the fuck out of here.
This episode should have had very little Voyager in it. It should have been very Pathfinder-esque, where main characters don't show up at all. And what it should have done is done as much of the story as it could have from the perspective of the planet. Just like, the Voyager shows there's the star and there's all the stuff, and you see the vignettes, and you can, the first clue it's Voyager is that they observe it and they can see it with their first telescopes. And then, somewhere in the middle of the episode, the Doctor beams down and we see more of his adventures on the planet. And and that's how it gets conveyed to us, is that he has conversations with characters where he, let's out, like, oh, we just got here. What the fuck? That's what this episode needed. It needed to be more focused on the really cool background story that they built and less on just these filler scenes with technobabble that don't actually do anything, don't further the story, and made it so that we had as much of a de-emphasis on Voyager as possible, and instead we just saw everything through the perspective of the planet and how they were affecting it.
I really like this episode, but I'm feeling what you're putting down here, and if I was to reboot this episode, exactly what you're saying. You do this in the light of Living Witness, and you really do turn this into the fucking Inner Light episode for Voyager, where Doctor's not stuck down there for 3 years. He's stuck down there for like 6 centuries or something crazy. And you just watch the Doctor living through the rise of this civilization through these key periods, and he's your anchor through all of it.
Yeah, and even more so, it could be that there's like a family or a family line that he is shepherding, through this. He's like changing his identity or something. Like, there's so many cool like storytelling tropes you can use.
He's an elder vampire surviving centuries and pulling the strings in a jihad on the planet. I like it.
that I think summarizes why I don't consider it a top episode. It's because the truly great episodes of this show are not just a good idea executed competently. They elevate, and this just kind of comes up a little short on that. It plays it a little too safe and ends up focusing too much on stuff that doesn't matter for it to be an exceptional thing. But it is probably It is probably it is the best episode of Voyager this season. That's not the best episode of Star Trek this season. That would be Pathfinder, but that was a TNG episode, so we can't count it.
Maybe, Joe, or maybe you're just a shitty, mean, broken person who put too much time into Ninja Turtles NES game, and it's giving you bad opinions. Who knows?
The world will never know.
Yes.
But the world will know what episode that we watch next week. What is it?
We're going to be going into season 6, episode 13, Virtuoso. I see Tom and some no names in Neelix. One species so appreciates the Doctor's singing talent that he considers resigning his commission and staying on with his millions of adoring fans. Wow. Joe, if we had skip options, I think I would say I want to skip this episode. Everything we just talked about, the Doctor wanting to run away and have a life somewhere else, would have been fucking sweet, great Alex Jones conspiracy theory in blink of an eye, and you're going to give it to me because someone likes the way he sings.
Yeah, this is a terrible one, and I hate it. And this is what we're damned to.
Season sucks.
Yeah, this is just bad. I'm
going to learn about the Doctor having a fan club instead of the Bajoran Borg spending her last year on Voyager, or month, or whatever the fuck it was. That's the story they wanted to tell here. Now, I don't get to know about the Equinox crew members settling into Voyager and dealing with the shame and guilt, but I'm going to get to see the Doctor have roses thrown at him and more goddamn singing. Great. Thanks.
All right. Well, we'll get through this together, and I assure you will be more broken by the process, because TMNT on NES already broke me. So until then, peace.